Way down deep, there is sacred ground. Way down beneath your feet, there is magic to be found. Way down deep, there is sacred ground. Deep down inside your skin, there is wisdom to be found.
I remember a childhood dream of being chased down an alley, and so for a lot of time in my life, I've had this feeling of like having to go somewhere. It's not like running away, but it's like running to something.
And my dream was actually of a financial statement, and the financial statement was printed on a page that was actually the images of leaves.
The other night, there was a baby alligator who chomped on my finger.
Although sometimes the image will become so strong that it stops me in my tracks.
And when I was a child, I used to have reoccurring dreams of planes flying into buildings.
So it's amazing to me that with 7 billion people on the planet, there's a third of them in the process of dreaming in any given minute.
So I've been having these reoccurring lava dreams, but I actually have been having them since I was a child.
I think recently I was the constable of Moscow.
And I grew up in the Midwest, so there wasn't a threat of lava.
And then the dream where my mother came back, and she took me back to a foster home I was in and helped me verbally beat up the person that was really mean to me growing up. Okay. And it was as vivid as me talking to you right now.
And a month after I moved off the island, the lava flow actually started going towards the town where I lived. And right now, at this moment, it is actually flowing into town, which has triggered more lava dreams. And the night that the lava crossed one of the main roads, I had no idea that it was that close, but I did have a dream, and actually that the lava was flowing over a human body. That was like a sacrifice kind of a dream.
Through a bad time in my life, I had a kind of regular dream of being buried alive and waking up in a casket. That was the worst experience.
Recently in a dream I was given a cello and asked to play it.
More recently, I guess maybe showing that there is some equilibrium or positive resonance in my life, I've had the image of a tuning fork.
Well, Jung, like the rest of us, had dreams of his own, and he spoke at 10 years old of having a dream that was very threatening to him and very embarrassing to him, and he never told anybody about that dream until he was in his 40s. And that was a dream where he felt that God was defecating on the great cathedral at Basel, which he passed every day en route to school.
For Jung, dreams were messages from the unconscious. They were ways for us in our everyday lives to be in touch with the unconscious. They were gifts.
And that the excrement that was striking the cathedral was golden, he said. And he said, I realized in many of the rejected values and those no longer considered useful, there was gold to be found.
The unconscious is the part of us that is often banished from awareness because it's too painful. It's a part of us that's unknown but knowable. And it's a part of us that we need to continually work to be in touch with so that we can become whole, we can become stronger, and we become wiser as a result of our working relationship with the unconscious.
And then I'll spend sometimes months chewing, years even chewing on what that particular dream meant at that particular time.
Yeah, I think it's a very blurred thing, but we have to study it more, I guess, because I think it's the most creative thing we have in our brains.
Dreams are fascinating because they are limitless and full of possibility. You can speak a foreign language, you can fly, you can resolve all your problems.
There are no rules, there are no structures, there are no physics. So it's completely different than this consensus reality we live in here, where there are physics, there's gravity, for example, and then there's an experience of time that we have in this waking reality. There isn't even physicality. And even in my dreams, I seldom have a body, but I still have a consciousness and a perspective.
Dreams are different from stories in that stories have a timing and a linear sequence. In dreaming, it's very hard to sort that out because things are almost happening all at once. So to capture the different images and events that are happening can be a very tricky business.
None of us know where dreams come from. All we know is there's a tremendous amount of autonomous and spontaneous activity that occurs pretty regularly every night. Sleep research tells us that we dream up to 6 times per night. That's a tremendous amount of activity.
Deep kinds of things that are generally not part of my consciousness bubble up in the middle of the night, and they're surprises.
I'm attracted to Jungian psychology because it's a psychology of wholeness. And dreams are an essential part of understanding ourselves and making ourselves more whole.
I definitely learn things from my dreams. It's like just little things that have been bubbling around the edges of my thoughts that I just really can't quite put together. It's like sometimes when I wake up in the morning, it's suddenly like, oh, there it is. It's like there's a truth to it.
Dreams are good companions because they are ever available. Every night there's a fresh supply. Not always do I remember them, but there's a sense that there is a great deal going on underneath the surface that is pertinent to my life, that is helpful to my life, that is mysterious, that is sometimes entertaining, sometimes perplexing, and always meaningful if I can live with them long enough to actually allow the meaning to come forth.
Anything that's happening in my waking, everyday life, I find is influenced by and enlarged by the dreams that I have.
I think that Jung really opened us up to the mystery of dreams.
We go somewhere else when we dream, spiritually, subconsciously. We just have to leave our body, leave the world for 8 to 10 hours a night.
We dream because our brain doesn't give us a choice. It just kind of overrides and does it.
And they have a sense of humor. I love that. I say the dream maker has a sense of humor. Some of my dreams have been so funny that I just wake up laughing.
Jung was a Copernican revolution. He said that dreams are not just the leftover things from the day. Dreams open us up to all kinds of meanings, all kinds of potentials.
Nature doesn't seem to be wasting time or energy. It has a purpose. And one of the purposes may be simply to metabolize the experiences we're having on a daily basis. Where the input of energy is so much larger than we can absorb at the time, our own psyche seems to continue to work on them, to absorb them, and to assimilate them.
We dream to repair our brains. I think there is some sort of fundamental healing that goes on during the dreaming process.
When people in sleep research have been deprived of dreaming, not of sleeping, but of dreaming, they are in a few days more likely to hallucinate, which suggests that there is material there, quantities of energy that need to be processed.
We spend a third of our lives horizontally parked on a soft surface with our eyes closed and all our senses turned off just so we can attend to this dream state.
But also has to do with the restoration, reparation, and metabolizing of life's trauma, because life is itself inherently traumatic. And underneath that trauma, there is that resilient organism that's trying to manage it and absorb it and move on and to grow.
And they're trying to compensate for our natural one-sidedness in this culture. If you think about it, we're way too involved with using our rational thinking process, problem solving, and don't give ourselves time and space to get away from the techie part of life, to find the creative process that often comes through dreams and related to the unconscious through expressive arts.
But Jung also pointed out another reason altogether, and that is the way in which the psyche offers a commentary on how our life is being conducted.
The unconscious informs our waking life and how we live our lives. It's also true that how we live our lives, our daily endeavors and our work and our families and our thoughts and experiences inform the unconscious. And so the two work together. We need them both. Jung recognized that.
I think people need to be trained to pay attention to their dreams, because most of us will just ignore them or downplay the message in the dream. It was, oh, a silly dream, you know, or something like that.
So the dialogue with dreams is really dialogue with one's own soul, because dreams are one of the many ways in which the psyche communicates to us.
And most people don't want to hear those messages.
If I were an alien and I looked at humans, I would wonder why they worked so hard to keep the irrational away from their awareness. Because it's kind of okay that the irrational doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to. It offers you something creative. So if I were an alien, I would say, wow, guys, relax. That's pretty colorful and interesting.
I try to draw it. I think everybody can learn to draw meaning from their dreams.
The fact that we don't educate people about the value of their psyche and the depth of understandings and meanings and connectedness to the world, to nature, all of that, I think is really a terrible admission in education.
I think there are small housekeeping dreams which tend to the business of your day or of your week. And those are almost sorting out the emotions of things that have happened to you in your relationships and your work. But occasionally we'll have a dream that has a real sense of otherness to it. Jung would say it has an archetypal depth. And these are the dreams of a lifetime. And I've probably had 4 or 5 dreams like that literally changed my life. They have what is called a numinous quality, almost a spiritual, holy otherness to them. And they seem to have wisdom not only about things that have happened to you, but also things about where you're going and your destiny. And this is what Jung would call big dreams. And those are truly a gift.
If I've got all this stuff going on inside of me and I don't acknowledge it and I don't listen to it, then I am ignoring a huge part of what we call life.
So unconscious is always there. Unconscious is the big pool of spirit, of ourselves. And we are in a process of revealing that to ourselves and to one another through life.
So I like to tell people that I'm a dreamer, and that means many things to me. I have a lot of creative visions of realms of possibility. And to me, the dream state, when we're sleeping and we're having dreams, is just as potent and real as the waking state that we all agree upon exists.
I keep having dreams of a school bus. The school bus was on the dock. The school bus was, the last one I was actually driving the school bus, and for what I learned now from dream interpretation, that means that you're on a spiritual journey, and actually being able to get on the bus and drive it not very far, but get on the bus and drive it means that I am on my way. That had a big impact on my life.
There have been a number of babies over and over and over again. And I am in the midst of many changes, and so it feels like a classic way of expressing itself, these changes and these new beginnings, new births.
I have recurring symbols in my dreams of houses, cars, other vehicles of transportation. And when I find that those vehicles of transportation are disabled, then it tells me something about my ego at the time.
Jung really helped us to open up what the symbology of dreams are and what the language of the dream state is, so that it could more clearly inform us and communicate about what's going on for us.
If my ego is struggling to be in charge, then it can tell me that maybe I need to let go. I need to let go of control.
I think we have a lot of things to explain to ourselves.
Well, the inner dreamer is almost like paintings on a cave wall. It uses a pre-verbal language. It comes from an older part of our being, and it speaks in imagery. And those images are very potent because they're pregnant with emotion and meaning.
Dreams speak the language of the soul. It's non-rational, and it's images. And from that place, not only do come dreams, but also visions, also art, also all sorts of creativity. All the great discoveries of science actually come from that same place.
Dream interpretation is something that has been used from the beginning of recorded time. In the case of the Bible, it was to send the person a message.
I study with a medicine man, and he says that the Spirit speaks through signs, symbols, images, feelings, emotions, dreams, and daydreams. It does not speak through the tongues of man. That's just the way it is.
Well, humans dream because they have pictures. The mind is made up of pictures. And when you dream, it's just jumbled up pictures that you have in your mind.
Dreams sometimes indeed play tricks on us. It's not always easy to interpret the symbols that are a part of our dreams.
Jung was asked, why is nature so deceptive, so obscure? And he said, nature's not deceptive. It speaks in a language called the symbolic language, which was once the common language of our ancestral past. And he said, what we need to do is to try to understand what those symbols can point us toward.
A symbol is an idea, an image, a representation of meaning.
The problem is that we've lost the language of the dreams in our culture. We've gone extroverted, intellectual, and that separates us from the language of the dreams.
Symbols in general try to communicate and bridge the gap between the irrational and the rational.
Artists express the unconscious through their symbolism. Their art is a connection with a deeper, soulful, non-intellectual piece. So artists' purpose really in society is to represent the symbols, is to represent those things that are ineffable and difficult to describe with words.
And Jung was overjoyed, I would say, that would be my word, when an image appears. Because with the image, one can then work with that. One can amplify it, one can draw it or paint it, or in other ways try to get at the meaning of that dream for that person.
So there might be 3 different definitions for a symbol, but in that moment, one of those are going to pop up, and that's what that might mean for that dream.
And I think of the dream not so much like a narrative as imagery and images that shift.
For instance, I had a baby alligator that chomped on my finger the other night. My guess is that there's a primitive part of me that's kind of resisting what's going on in my life.
Sometimes the dream symbols, the issues presented in the dream are disguised, and we have to be good explorers and peer through the disguise to come to the core of meaning in our dreams.
It's always mysterious. We never can quite grab it, and the rational mind wants to grab it and hold it tight. But we can't do that with dreams. They're non-sequential sometimes. They're using images that we already have from the world, but they're uniquely designed for us. It's an interesting language problem.
I have sipped from streams of longing. I have slept on desert sands, dreaming on waves nowhere belonging. Stars are rising from my head.
In German, the word for nightmare is Albtraum, or Albträume, and it means essentially the dream of the magnitude of the mountains, because they embody that large other that seems to dominate. And so we are small and life is large.
You can run and you can walk really slowly, but the lava's still coming. It's still going to get you. That feeling of it's coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. And a lot of times, to get out of the path of the lava, I would be scrambling uphill, really steep hills. Sometimes it felt like climbing stairs or digging my hands into a cliffside to try to get out of the flow path.
I'm chewing something really sticky, and it sticks to my teeth, and it seems to be getting larger and larger, and I have a big wad, and it's sticking to my teeth, and my teeth begin to get pulled out.
So I had to reassemble a cadaver like in a bathtub kind of thing, and my mom was really pushing me to do it. I didn't want to do it, but I was all bloody and putting this body back together, and then the heart got up and ran away.
I think people ignore some of their dream material because it scares them. And maybe they don't have anyone to help them make sense of dreams.
I ignore stuff all the time. I refuse to write it down because I know it means something.
So my belief is that Spirit speaks to us loudly sometimes so that we remember the dream and evolve out of it, get the good out of it, to understand the language of it, and so that we don't, most of all, don't forget it.
It's that nightmares are also an opportunity for our emotions to come through.
First of all, unresolved emotional issues are the reason we dream, because there's an ongoing need to get a wide enough and deep enough capacity to deal with what life brings us.
The psyche is using energy to say, get it. I'm sending you the message. Are you getting it?
I really like strong sensations, so I don't feel like having a nightmare is something you have to be afraid of.
We have recurring dreams because our unconscious is very interested in making us more whole. And so if we don't get the message the first time or the second time in a dream, it will keep at us because our own unconscious way of knowing wants to make itself more conscious to us.
Nightmares are experiences of the overwhelming nature of life. In fact, there are times history itself is a nightmare. So wherever we are encountering that which feels large and monstrous in our life, it can show up, and sometimes in exaggerated form, or where our fears get embroidered and the way in which they are summoning us to take them more seriously and to address them more consciously.
Midnight pilgrim, there's a fire in your belly. Midnight pilgrim, there's a storm behind your eye. Midnight pilgrim, don't let the shadows tell you you can't hurl your burning heart across the sky.
Jung found that the types of images that showed up in dreams were also showing up in mythology. But he loved looking at the way symbols appear in different cultures and across different times. He called these archetypal meanings, in other words, blueprints, things that we all share as human beings. These core patterns that are grounded in our biology show up in dreams as symbols, and that makes them very powerful.
I believe symbols appear in dreams because they're a piece of who we all are in a connected sense. We all share much of the same symbology and same symbols in our lives and experiences. One symbol of connectedness in dreams is the recurring theme of water, the recurring ebb and flow and dance in water, the submersion in water, to come back about coming out of life, coming out of experience, immersion.
I've had people present with quite different life circumstances, virtually the same dream, and then you begin to realize that there's some kind of storehouse, if you will, a thesaurus of imagery that we all draw upon. Some of it from popular culture, to be sure, some of it from the unique history of each person, and some of it from the collective unconscious, as Jung called it, the storehouse of images of humanity. Because the human being is a creature that forms these images, and the human psyche has been doing that for thousands of years, and we know that directly from their reports.
The dream is an experience of relationship to something greater than myself, because it comes from what I can only call the dream maker, who speaks in a language of images that is both on one level absolutely unique to images that I might be familiar with, but also speaks from a level of universal images from all of the world's great religions, from all of human history. And through that experience of interaction with dreams, I come to feel connected to something greater than myself.
And that is what Jung did. Open us back up to wonder, awe, and mystery. We're not the center of the dream. The dream dreams us.
It's been there forever, since long before my time. And the stairs creak and moan as downward we climb. Don't you long for a taste of that deep cellar wine?
And it's from a dream where I walked up the steps of this church and opened the door, and there was a priest there offering me a package. And in the package there was garments. And he said to me, if you are not willing to show up for this role, then you need to call someone else on the waiting list, which I just thought was almost funny.
I've just been surprised by the different things that have bubbled up from my unconscious, and that happens at night. And so I find it rather fascinating, and if I hear someone offer an explanation for how and why this is happening, it just makes it a lot more interesting for me.
And I realize that lots of people think it's just a neurological blip, but it's so profound when you start paying attention.
All of us dream 4 or 5 times every night. What differs is our capacity to remember them. And that's something that we can actually train ourselves to do just by having the intention that the dream has something that's valuable.
I really need this question answered. I really need help making this decision. Sometimes the answer will come to you in a dream because you have put the thought out there, or the manifestation out there.
And usually talking about a more powerful dream is something very interesting. I like to debate with my friends.
I generally look things up and want to know what I'm being told and the direction and path to go. And
here's how I might work with a dream if I had an image. So I'm going to choose a tomato. If I have a dream about a tomato, I'm not going to immediately decide what that means. I could look in a book, there are books of symbols out, and I might get some ideas. But to truly let that image enter me so that I can fully understand it or embrace it, I need to spend a little time. So I might buy tomatoes. I might eat tomatoes or crush tomatoes. Was it an heirloom or aroma? How does it smell? What are my ideas or my memories about tomatoes? Did I can tomatoes with my mother? Or was I forced to eat tomatoes as a child and didn't want to? I begin to ask myself different kinds of questions. I might draw or paint the tomato. anything that I can do around that image amplifies it. It gives me information so that the feeling that I get inside is that of what the tomato might mean for me is true for me, not true for somebody else who might have a dream about tomatoes.
So the dialogue with dreams is really dialogue with one's own soul, because dreams are one of the many ways in which the psyche communicates to us.
So I first started paying attention to my dreams when I was 8 years old, and I've been keeping journal records of my dreams since then.
But the more we work with them, the more familiar they become and the more friendly they become.
First, when I wake up in the mornings, I'll record the dreams, and then I'll sit with them over a period of anywhere from a month to years. And then when I feel compelled to, I'll sketch out a design of what I want them to look like.
We always have to examine a dream in the specific life context of that person, and to see that while dreams can be commenting on today's events or tomorrow's anticipation, they can also be touching a very timeless part of that person's journey and linking them up to the sort of unfinished story of the human journey which is unfolding through that individual's life.
This one was one where I was looking directly at my ovaries, and there were chocolates like right in front of them, as if almost like an altar was there. It was kind of supposed to be like legs, but then it turned into a sort of a wishbone. And then I realized, am I wishing for this possibility of being a parent or having a child? Something that I really was pretty much denying for most of my life.
Jung also believed that dreams tell us about the future and help us to prepare for the future. So making a study of dreams, learning to connect to our dreams, believing in our dreams, and understanding the messages from our dreams is so precious.
So this dream particularly had a significant impact on my life because it helped me realize that I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to take the risk of trying to see if I could still be a mom. And I believe that there's the wishbone aspect of it as well as the ovaries, but then also as if I'm putting out a gift to the gods and displaying chocolate is the way that I felt about it as I was creating it.
The dream is something that happens. It's an event. It's not something that we create. And it's not something that we can control. So I think of the dream as a Jungian as one of those great last frontiers of uninhabited territory where you can go and learn things about inner dynamics, learn things about your family, your community, your culture. It picks up all that material and it feeds it back in this incredibly creative, symbolic way. One of the techniques also that Jung contributed to dream analysis is that of active imagination, which involves, in essence, having a dialogue with the elements of our dream.
And any time the imagination is allowed to come into life, that in itself is nourishment.
Jung was willing to explore unknown places, and rather than steer away and be afraid of the unknown, he was willing to embrace it through creative processes, through association, through active imagination. So rather than repressing those kinds of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, he would have us lean into them to find the gold underneath.
And we live very limited incarnate lives, and so any connection with that eternal limitless dimension is nourishing, enlivening, enriching.
So the help that might be available to get access to the dreams are working with a psychoanalyst, doing dream journaling, not being afraid to tap that inner sense of myself to be able to sit with what that message from my dream might be. Writing, trying to tap into the unconscious.
Jung used to tell his dreams to some worker in the field near his house who knew nothing about psychology, and he would give him a fresh perspective and point out things that Jung could never see himself, because the dream is always showing you something that the consciousness is not quite getting. If you think the dream is just telling you something you already know, you're misinterpreting it.
So when I'm analyzing my dreams, a lot of times I may refer to a symbols book just to kind of get ideas, but in the essence, there's so many different definitions for different symbols that I can allow my psyche to know which one's the most appropriate for that moment and for that dream, and I can grab onto that.
Sometimes it will grab you and you don't know why. So that's an example of how the symbol is trying to communicate something from the deep psyche, and I don't know what it is. And I don't think anybody else knows exactly what it is.
So I can take a story that has symbols in it, or has chaoticness, or has not reality, and I can make it into five different stories that speak to 5 different areas of my life.
So Jung used the dream as a way to open up more meanings, not to reduce it down to 1 or 2 simple meanings like a detective story.
In a sense, Jungian psychology is expansive. It is not deductive. It doesn't try to put everything in a box and say, oh, that means that, or that describes how a person is only.
And so what we need to do is not literally, but symbolically understand what these images mean.
The other fun part about working with dreams is that every step in working with them brings out a new meaning and a new understanding.
When I think about my own dreams, I don't think about symbols in the dream. I think about the action in the dream.
The mood of a dream really helps in communicating to you what the message is from the unconscious. To be able to get the feeling of the dream helps you to understand what's coming through.
Let's say joy is an emotion in dreams. Even though that seems to us very positive and different from a nightmare, the intention, so to speak, is the same.
There's no one interpretation of a dream. A dream is multifaceted. It's like a diamond with many facets. As you turn it in the light, at different times it will reflect different things.
The dream image that each of us gets is ours alone. And how we work with it, what meaning it has for us, is specific and particular to us. One might, if one is working with an analyst or a therapist, talk about the dream in many ways, get insight from people. But I believe that only the dreamer knows what that dream means in that particular time.
The best interpretation of a dream is one that seems to touch our body, our mind, and our heart. And it has an uncanny feeling where you have a sense that, aha. Sometimes we call it the it clicks method. So other people in a dream group or friends can tell you their version of it. And oftentimes they're just free associating or projecting their own material on your dream. But when they touch on something that really feels right to you, it's an embodied emotional feeling.
As Jung once said, failing to analyze a dream is like failing to open a wise letter from the unconscious.
It's almost like we're boats going down a very busy river, and we have to position our raft in the current.
It's a little disheartening at times to realize the power of the unconscious. As Jung said, whoever's discovered the power of the unconscious knows from that point on that one is not the master of one's own house. And so we have to realize there are many other inhabitants in our psychic household. And we better start paying attention to who those other personages are, what their agendas might be, and what they have in mind.
I've heard some people say that dreams are a more honest communication than the ego has, because it has so many defenses and so many filters.
You can oftentimes see the direction that you're heading, and you can be redeeming parts of yourself that have been left behind in the past.
I put on the skin of my ancestors. I put on the skin of a ghost. I put on the skin of my enemies. I put on the skin I love most. I borrow the feathers of the frightened. I borrow the hooves of the fleet. I breathe so my senses are heightened. I breathe in the rage of the street. Like so many scales that clatter to the floor. For the 10,000th time I shed what is mine. Look around.